Hey everyone, so time for another video. Today, like I mentioned in my last video, we're going to be talking about a John Boyne novel called This House is Haunted. I honestly can't remember how I came across it or why I wanted to read it. I think I was looking for something else in the haunted house realm of things, and this came up and sounded interesting. For some reason, I must have crossed wires when I was looking at books. I thought it was going to be one of those books that, it tells a story of like people 100 or 200 years ago and then switches to modern day where those previous characters are now haunting the current characters, but it's not like that at all. It's the story of a young woman who loses her father. Her mother died years ago, and when her father died, she's kind of cast adrift in London. So, on the spur of the moment, she accepts a position at Godlin Hall, out in the country as a governess. She's currently a school teacher, and she pretty much uproots herself out of London for a change of scenery, getting away from everything that kind of reminds her of her father. And it turns out she can't afford the rent on the house without her father, so she ends up leaving. And then when she gets there, there's something amiss. Just not just how she feels riding up to the house, but also how people react to her when she says, "Oh yeah, I'm the new governess at Godlin Hall." Everyone just, you imagine, people calling after her, "Dead man walking," they look at her kind of, askance, and they immediately cut off communication with her. So the story goes through her becoming governess to these two children that are seemingly alone in a house. Like, there's no adults. Whoever the governess is the only adult figure in the house. And it's really, it's weird. It's just weird. The book reviews promise a twist, and, oh, this is going to be a great twist. So, I keep waiting for, the children are actually ghosts, the entire town is, just filled with ghosts, something like that. And it's interesting, but we'll get to that. So, it's a gothic novel, and it's told kind of in a Dickensian tone, like a Charles Dickens type tone, where she is, she's an orphan and she's cast adrift in the world, and it also kind of balances, kind of like with a Bronte, like a Jane Eyre type situation, where she's homely, she, doesn't have any prospects, she goes to this grand hall to, take a job as a governess, and you kind of hope for her to have a happy ending, and she does in a way, but we'll get to that also. In this book, I gotta say, I was actually more intrigued and attracted to, I mean, they're main characters, but at the same time, I don't know that they're supposed to be the main characters. Obviously there's Eliza Kane. She's the woman who goes to be a governess. But my attention was really taken, especially with Isabella and Santina. Isabella is one of the two children. It's Isabella and her younger brother Eustace. And Isabella is 12 years old, and she's very precocious. She's very mature. And she's very creepy, in how she handles herself and some of the things she says and the way she says them. And, you just wonder, like, okay, what's this little girl gonna do, And the thought, did occur to me at some point, like, okay, is the little girl the one who's, like, killing off governesses and, causing some of the racket in the hall? But what the story turns out to be is, years previously, the children's mother, she was a bride from Spain, who the family initially didn't approve of, but she eventually won them over. And when she had her children, she kind of started getting weird. And it was attributed to her childhood trauma. You know, it's referred to that she was raped or molested by two family members. So after she has her children, she's very, don't touch my child. My child can't leave my sight. You may not touch my child. Especially men. Men may not touch my child. Men may not touch my daughter. I don't want my children leaving my sight for a moment. So she's very overprotective of Isabella. Fast forward a little bit, she gets pregnant again. And this time she just, it goes over the edge. And she ends up killing the governess and severely maiming her husband. Like, her husband's up in the attic gasping for breath, and you can see bone and cartilage, and he's missing fingers, and it's like horrific what she did to him with a fire poker. And the governess is just plain dead. So she ends up getting hanged for, murder and attempted murder. But then she comes back to protect her children, and anytime there's a new governess, the governess is essentially either chased out of the house and or killed. Before Eliza, there's only one person who actually survives. And, it just leaves this mark on these women. But the way Isabella is, it really makes you wonder, like, obviously the story's told from first person narrative on the part of Eliza. So you really wonder, what are the missing pieces? Like, is the mother, Santina, like, still communicating with Isabella and, kind of feeding her some of this stuff? How much of this is loyalty to her mother versus kind of like a ghostly influence, spiritual possession, and, the mother really speaking through Isabella. How much of Santina is there in Isabella? And she's just such a creepy child. In the end, she does fall to her death. She climbs up onto her father's bed where he lay dying as the house is being torn apart by the spirits, and she crashes to her death. And that was another part that really made me wonder, like, did she know she was going to die? Did she go there for comfort? Did she go there to kind of, like, push her father over the edge and really, kill him? It leaves so many questions. And then in the end, Eliza comes up with this plan. Like, she wants to leave with the children and take them out of that place to a safer place. And I wonder, like, Isabella is very adverse to leaving the house because of her mother. And, I wonder if the mother had been destroyed. And please, feel free to hit the comments with your thoughts on any of this if you read this book. If the mother spirit had been dispersed and gotten rid of, would Isabella have been willing to leave? Or would she have insisted on staying in the house and becoming like a Miss Havisham? Just living in the house and everything is going to ruins and, kind of like an alternate ending. Like, what would that have been like? What would that have looked like? And also, in the end, she dies. And then, spoiler alert, it turns out that she comes back to haunt Eustace. And I just wonder, first off, that opens it to a whole second book that I would be totally willing to read. But what kind of spirit would Isabella make? Would she be violent like her mother? Or, in life she seemed to have a certain respect for Eliza because Eliza lasted longer than the other governesses. She actually survived, without running away. She seemed to have a certain respect for Eliza for that. So I wonder, like, would she be a violent ghost towards Eliza, or would she be more, hey, I'm here, don't mind me, occasionally, playing jokes on her and moving her wine glass or something. Would she be more of a playful poltergeist versus, the full-on throwing paintings on the floor and yanking people's ankles? It's just something I wonder about. And then the other character, like I mentioned, Santina, she's another one that really kind of drew my attention and my imagination. I feel bad for Eliza, kind of, because, she's a nice enough person, but I really liked other characters more than her. And, I mentioned that she suffered a lot of trauma as a child, and that played into what ends up happening in the story. And you just have to wonder, like, what kind of life did she have? What was it like in her body and in her mind? The entire time she's like hovering over her children and don't touch my child. Like what? Oh, how much she must have suffered. How much energy that took. What kind of madness that was. Like flipping out that you kill someone. You kill the person who's trying to help you raise your children. Like, it's hard to fathom. I mean, and I've never been in that, thank God, I've never been in that experience where I was abused or anything like that. But just imagining the emotional and mental energy that takes to be in that kind of state of mind and to carry that forward to the afterlife. Like, oh my dear Lord, that's a lot of energy, dear Lord. Ghost Adventures should go investigate that if that were real. That'd be incredible. And the other thing I wonder, so towards the end of the book, the husband, Mr. Westerly, Santina's husband, says to kill him because it will release Santina's spirit and everything will end. Like, when he said that, it kind of triggered us. Why is she dependent on him living? Like, is part of the energy she has derived from his suffering? Or is it something else? Like, why does he need to be alive? Why did she leave him alive? Was it just she didn't get to finishing him off? Or she thought he was dead, but they pulled him back? Why was her energy so dependent on him remaining alive? So that, I don't know. If you have any thoughts, again, hit the comments. Like, I'm so curious to see you guys' take on this. And the other thought with keeping him alive, again, I'm looking at my notes. If I ever look down, you can assume I'm looking at my notes. The other thing with him remaining alive, was it that she could persist in her protector role because he was still alive, so therefore he was still a potential perpetrator of something against her children? And relating to that, tying back to Isabella, is that why Isabella seemed to have that closer connection to her mother? Because if something like that were going to happen to one of her children, it'd be more likely to happen to Isabella. Like, if someone to, God forbid, rape or molest one of the children, it would be more likely to be Isabella. Is that why they had that tighter bond? Because of that shared gender issue? If nothing else, this book leaves a lot to the imagination and leaves a lot to, just pondering these things and trying to, tease out the answer. And then, we'll give Eliza a couple minutes. She is a main character. It is a first-person narrative on her part. And she is this homely girl with no prospects. She goes, she takes this job. And the poor girl ends up further disfigured. The entire time she was there, the water was ice cold. So she goes to, I think she was like washing a dish or something. She plunges her hands right in, and turns out the water is scalding hot. It has never been hot before, but this time, she did something to, anger the spirit, and it just scalded her hands, burnt her hands, and they ended up disfigured. So you gotta feel for the girl. You really gotta feel bad for her. Also, I don't want to say I was amused. It was kind of interesting how the author included little fantasies, and nothing like over the top, nothing dirty, nothing, gratuitously, 50 Shades of Grey-esque. But it was kind of interesting that you had many fantasies about the lawyer. These little touches, and I would just love to, lay against his chest and, feel him next to me. He's a married man, but she still has these little fantasies, and I don't know, I thought it was kind of interesting that he included that, because she has no prospects, and, there's this married man, and she's just like, her last potential prospect turned out to be, touching the girls at her school, and then he committed suicide. So, she hasn't exactly had much luck in the guy department, but, it was kind of cute in a way, kind of endearing, and you could definitely, I as a grown woman, I could see myself in that, how you have little crushes on unavailable men, and just scooch a little closer, so that was kind of cool. I thought that was a nice touch. And here's a question, hit me up in the comments on this. Do you think she has a happy ending? On the one hand, she survives, and she ends up with a child of her own. She takes in Eustace. Isabella's dead. The entirety of Eustace's family is dead. So she ends up with a child of her own, and she ends up with a job that she loves, and, she's a self-sufficient woman. But on the other hand, she ends up haunted again, this time by Isabella. So, and I guess that kind of ties back to what kind of spirit is Isabella. Is she going to be like the playful, haha, I got your shoes type person, or is she going to be, like her mother? And she survives this malicious ghost, which is a point in her favor. So I think overall I would say it's a happy ending. I'd like to think that Isabella wouldn't be quite as malevolent as her mother. The last thing I'm going to make a note on that I thought was kind of interesting in this book is the entire time, there's this sense of, and some of it is overt and some of it's, kind of suggested, but this general antipathy towards modern women and, oh, you're not one of those modern women, are you? Talking it down like, oh. Sorry, technical difficulties, so I gotta make this quick. There's this general antipathy towards modern women, but at the end of the book, she ends up a modern woman because she's self-sufficient, she's a working mother, and she's a single mother. So I thought that was kind of cool. A nice little, towards everyone who gave her a hard time before. So that's the end of my video before my camera completely craps out. Hit the comments. If you have any answers to some of the questions I raised, please feel free. I would love to continue this discussion. In the meantime, This House is Haunted. Highly recommended. Love this book. I'll definitely be looking into more of his stuff. And until next time, readers, have a good one.